Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the LucaBeth Lounge, the cozy space for everybody who loves Lucas and Elizabeth from One Calls the Heart. We're here today with me, Jillian.
Me, Div. Hi, guys.
And Linda. Hello.
We're back. It's been a while for us because we did those 2 episodes and then we took a couple weeks off. So hopefully we remember how to do this. Today we are talking about how we were not misled, and we've kind of gone over this topic a little bit, but we're going to do it from a different perspective. It's kind of the sheet shows early on, but we're doing it from the perspective of the writers, the producers, the marketing team, all that. So kind of like from a behind the scenes look at it. So yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today. And if you're listening to this in the future, I just want to mention today in history, we have just found out that the Lucas Jack dog scene is not on the season 8 DVD. We're kind of heartbroken. We're just a little sad. So hopefully we'll get to see it in the future. I don't know. I hope that they release it online because they totally told us that we were going to see it, and it's not there. But
we are being misled.
So we're misled.
Appropriate.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, so sad. But anyway, I'm sure there's still a lot of really good deleted scenes on there. So go get your season 8 DVD from NFI Films. Little plug there. We're not sponsored. Okay. So we're kind of gonna go through season 6, 7, and 8 because even though season 8 is the one where it's kind of been the controversial season where people think that we were misled, we're gonna go even further into it and talk a little bit about season 6 and 7 too. So we're starting there. Do you guys think that the casting of Chris and Kevin was an indication of the end game?
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, I do too.
Me too.
Linda, tell us why.
Oh, well, I mean, Chris interviewed first for Lucas, and we know he failed. And then he got auditioned for Nathan, and they liked him so much that they wanted him to try for Lucas with chemistry tests. So in my mind, the reason they're doing a chemistry test is because it's really important that this person have the chemistry with Erin that they're wanting. And from my understanding is it went exceptionally well. And so I think that's why in the end they said he needs to be Lucas, not Nathan.
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing some last minute prep work for our podcast today, and I watched the Sarah Scoop interview with Kevin. It was done back in February. Oh, I feel so smart. I wrote everything down today. And he actually says that they were really interested in him for Nathan as well. And apparently he first did a chemistry read with Erin on Skype because he was doing another show at the time and apparently he couldn't get away. That's so mean. They wouldn't let him go to an audition. But anyway, so he did a Skype thing with Erin and it was kind of so-so, I think is what he said. Or maybe it was good. Ooh, I just watched it like 2 hours ago. But then he did finally get to go in and they did do a chemistry read in person together. And so they did like him for Nathan, but the fact that they liked Chris for Nathan and that he got Lucas means they really wanted Chris.
Yeah.
The way I see it.
Yeah. I always thought, like, looking back especially, I feel like Lucas was written to be Elizabeth's next great love.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that they say that they didn't make the decision until season 8, but I mean, Erin Krakow could tell me that to my face and I still don't think I would believe her. I'd be like, okay, yeah, sure. Like, come on. I mean, from a production standpoint, would you write the same story again? Like with the Mountie? I just feel like we've already heard that story. We've
Yeah.
spent, we spent 5 seasons hearing that story, and then I just feel like you would write something different, right?
Yeah.
So I always thought that, but then hearing the whole audition story really solidified it for me. Like the fact that Chris auditioned for both of them and then got called back for, oh no, he auditioned for Lucas, right? And then, yeah, like you said, it didn't go so well, according to Chris. I'm sure it was fine. And then he got called back, read for Nathan, and then they were like, hey, can you stay? And then read with Erin. I mean, come on. I mean,
you wanted to do it right then.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And another reason too for Chris, they didn't want what happened with Dan, right? And Jack, and get to the point where they're going to put this couple together and they're forever, and then have the actor go, no, I'm out of here. So I think they had to know somewhere in advance that whoever was playing the character that they wanted to was in this for the long haul.
And Kevin is involved in other shows. And I know I wonder how their contracts are different. Like, I wonder if they were like, hey, listen, you cannot leave the show. If you get cast in this part, you cannot leave, because we can't do this again. Like, if Chris were to leave now, I feel like it would have to be done. They can't do it again.
Yeah. But
I've always been curious about that, but I'm sure, they would never tell anybody that, but just speculation. Do you guys feel like you saw any interviews before the season 8 finale that kind of like gave away the ending a little bit? Or okay. So for me, I saw an interview, I think it was like a Facebook Live with Johanna. She's the one that I feel like, I don't want to throw her under the bus and like make her get in trouble or something, but she said something in an interview about how, it was when she read the final script and she was reading it and everybody was sitting there like in the green room, and she said Chris and Erin were in the corner talking about something important. And then she like read the last line and was like, oh my gosh, it's so amazing. And I was like, okay. Like, that kind of gave it away for me. But then there's still the doubt that creeps in. But do you guys feel like there was anything that gave it away before you saw the finale, besides on the show?
Nothing overtly that I saw, except for the one you're talking about, kind of hinted at it, but she could have been talking a little bit about something different, but I didn't think so.
Right.
That's just my interpretation. But as far as something else, I didn't really see it, but I didn't see a lot of pre-8 interviews and might have missed something. But
so for me, I don't know why I always thought it would be Lucas. Like you said, there is doubt that creeps up every now and then, but I want to give a shout out to my buddy Mary, because Mary and I kind of rode this out together, where we were like, no, narratively speaking, it has to be Lucas. The only way that it could be Nathan is if they gave in to the pressure. I wonder who would do that. The rabid side, if they were like really like pushing for it, I figured, okay, maybe they'll give in. Other than that, narratively it had to be Lucas. It just had to be. But to answer your question, I did feel like Erin gave it away in the I think it was after the first episode when they did that ET Facebook interview. It was Chris, Erin, and Kevin, and they asked Erin what she saw in each guy, what she saw in Lucas and what she saw in Nathan. And with Lucas, she didn't say very much, but with Nathan, she says, what did she say? She said, oh, they've both been through loss, and he's very protective of Elizabeth, and they understand loss, and there's a love there. She actually says the word love, and Kevin kind of reacts. He's like, ooh, you just said that. And I don't think Erin would, I wonder, like, was she being like, was she careless about it, like by using the word love? But then again, would she actually say love without thinking about the end game? Do you know what I mean? I don't know if I'm making any sense.
Like
but
like the overcompensation of it, kind of.
correct.
Like trying to be like like really discreet about it, but just kind of going a little bit too far.
Yeah, exactly. There we go.
Mhm.
Look, you genius. Join me and Mary. No, but then there was also the one where Erin was talking to, I really like this interviewer. His name is Jim. I'm going to go find his interview with Erin and I'm going to put it in. But he had an interview with Erin where Erin said the Hardys really love the story of Jack and Elizabeth, and they're not trying to replace that. They're trying to create something new. So to me, that was her saying, we're not doing the Mountie and the teacher love story again. We're doing something, we're doing a different kind of romance.
Yeah.
And that to me was a big hit. Just the way she said it was huge.
I feel like the other one that was kind of like the overcompensation kind of thing was when Kevin McGarry was doing that. What are those videos called that they like do for their fans?
Cameo.
Cameo. He was doing a cameo and it was for a Team Lucas fan. So he called up Chris on FaceTime and he was like, oh yeah, When Calls the Heart is on tonight. And I think it's the episode where Elizabeth chooses me. Kevin said that. And Chris was like, oh, I hate that episode. And I was like, I mean, you wouldn't say that if it actually went that way, unless you're doing like reverse psychology.
Yeah. Another thing, and this is kind of more of a hindsight thing, but when they asked about what would happen to the suitor that's not chosen, Kevin talked for like nearly 2 minutes where he was convincing fans like, hey guys, the other suitor's going to be okay. You guys should still watch. And now it's almost like, now you can tell it was probably him appealing to his fans and being like, there's more to Nathan's story than just Elizabeth.
True. Yeah. I mean, a lot of these interviews you could, I was like, well, I just always felt it was going to be Lucas. So in my mind, there were a lot of things that I felt, but I don't know that necessarily other people might have felt the same with some of these interviews that I do. But I agree with a lot of the ones you're talking about. And then there was also the one where Chris had an interview with Jen Lilly because they were doing their new movie, and just his reaction when she asked him about if Elizabeth chose him, just the look on his face was
the little smirk.
So, yeah. So
I know
there's
he's a
lots
really
of things
good
like
actor.
that. Yeah.
He's a really good actor, but he doesn't have a very good poker face.
Dude, he could not look at the screen when he said there's kissing. He would not look at the screen. He's like, there might be some kissing. I'm probably not as cute when I do it, but like it was just so funny. Like it was so obvious.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, especially looking back, like, without the doubt, like knowing it's like, okay.
Yep.
It was pretty obvious, but okay. Okay, so Elizabeth's projection of Jack onto Nathan started early on, which is arguable. But when do we think that began? Because I personally think that Elizabeth started projecting Jack onto Nathan from the very first moment that they met, because she was so nervous about meeting him. And we've mentioned that before, but when do you guys think that the projection really started?
I think it started from the beginning too. I didn't notice it. I've already talked about this before. I didn't notice it until the glance, the lady's choice scene. But I think it started right from the start. Like, it makes no sense for it to have started like midway through. Like, why would it? I mean, I guess they can write it that way, but it makes no sense to me that it would. I mean, I think it's like a trigger, right? She sees him like run past her. I think I can't remember what's happening in that scene, but Linda, I'll let you talk.
Yeah.
But right from the start.
For me, that's okay. For me, it was when I was first watching it, it was the dance for me. But when I went back and rewatched it, I could see how uncomfortable she was when she first met him, and when he came back after his first Mountie duty and stuff, and you could see the concern on her face, but it was more of a concern for a Mountie, she didn't even know. I don't think that was before. I think that was, I think that was before she even met him.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was from the start for me as well.
Yeah. Well, and it had been a while since Jack had died, and they hadn't gotten a new Mountie yet. So, and I don't think she heard that there was a new Mountie yet before she saw him, and then she was like, oh, we have a new Mountie,
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't like aware of his presence, and then she saw him. So it was just like, she saw the red surge run by, and she was like, oh,
Yeah, I think Bill mentioned something to her, but I don't remember if it was before she actually saw.
Yeah, Bill, I don't know if this is what you're talking about, but Bill said something after she saw him, but before she met him, and he was like, you don't have to, like, you're gonna have to meet him eventually, but you don't have to go right now, or something like that.
Might have been it.
Yeah, so we knew from the start that she was having some issues going to meet him, because when she opens that door and she sees a guy in red serge sitting at Jack's desk, it's a it's a projection. So in season 6, when Elizabeth chose Lucas for the Ladies' Choice dance, according to an interview with Alfonso, he almost wrote, I haven't seen this interview, but Div, you have. Alfonso almost wrote in a kiss between Lucas and Elizabeth during this scene.
Yep. I didn't see the interview. It was an article. I read the interview.
Oh, okay.
I read about it. So look at me. I took notes today because I didn't want to forget.
You.
I know. Dude, whatever. I don't mean to brag. I just mean I'm glad I can.
You. Good
okay.
job.
Let's see. So the quote is from Deseret.com, but he gave the interview to ET. And I'm going to put this up on the screen, but it basically says they did discuss having Lucas and Elizabeth share a kiss during the dance. And then they changed their minds, and he says, we wanted to be respectful of the fact that Elizabeth had recently been widowed and had a baby. My hope was that we could work the storyline such that the majority of the audience would be pulling for Elizabeth to have a romance, rather than feeling we foisted one on her. There's a word you don't hear every day. So this was in response to when he was asked, about the kiss. So you have to wonder, everyone's talked about how when Elizabeth kisses a guy, it's going to be over. She's not just going to go going around,
right,
kissing people. So when she does, it's going to be because she feels something. It's because it's there. So the fact that they would consider it that early, granted, I feel like it would have been too soon, but that's a big indication that they were willing to go with Lucas, and and as far as we're concerned, the way we see it, that's why they brought Chris in. Lucas was the end game.
Yeah, and they weren't gonna just flip flop. They weren't gonna be like, oh, she kissed Lucas, now I don't know, there's this love triangle now. Right. I think if they consider that, then it's like they didn't do it, so now there's room for them to be like, oh, maybe we should do a love triangle.
Yep.
So there's the glance.
Exactly. And it's important to remember this is pre John Tinker. This is Alfonso, because a lot of people say that John, changed things up, and that this was not the direction that Alfonso was going to go. And it's like, this is a perfect. They say it.
Yeah.
They're ridiculous.
Yeah.
They just know what direction John Tinker went in, and they're hopeful that in retrospect, they're like, oh, yeah, maybe we could have gotten it with Alfonso, gotten their end game. But now we also know what the hug was leading up to. So.
Yep. So one of the really big indicators, according to us, I don't know, I guess I can't speak for you guys, but I think we're on the same page. that Lucas was endgame was Lucas's fostering of Elizabeth's dream of becoming a writer. Because it was just such a huge bonding experience. And like, you know, you don't share your art with people that you could share your art with people that are friends or whatever. But the fact that she shared it with Lucas and nobody else, she didn't share it with Rosemary. She didn't share it with Nathan. She didn't share it with anybody else besides Jack. And then he continues to encourage her and be there by her side through this whole becoming of her dream that she's had since she was 5 years old. I mean, yeah, you can't really go back from that and be like, she was closer with Nathan. Like, she just wasn't. She was closer with Lucas. This is a huge, like, giving part of her heart, really. I mean, if this has been her dream for her whole life, she's giving part of her heart to Lucas and trusting him with it and saying, okay, yep, read my stories, read my chapters, help me with this. So, yeah.
Yep, and valuing his opinion, you know. She didn't do that with Nathan.
Not really. And come on, that's how we come upon the scene in the finale, in the season 8 finale. Now she wants to write a love story with him. It all connects. The writing storyline was huge, right? It spanned from, if we want to look through a magnifying glass, we could say all of season 7, but it was sprinkled into season 8 as well. I mean, it had Helen in it, and then it was more about their courtship, but then they came back to the book again in the finale, right? So it's, they tied it in with Lucas.
Yeah. Well, because Lucas got her started with it.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of more in Helen's hands, but it was Lucas's mom. Again, it's like something that they wrote. It was Lucas's mom. It was a book editor that's helping Elizabeth edit her book. And then, so he was there to support her along the way, but they also had to make it so that, you know, Lucas didn't write the book. I mean, they said that a couple times. Of course, he didn't write the book, but he's there to support her. And they kind of both understand that she's thankful for his support and his encouragement. And he's like, no, it's all you. It's all you. So it was kind of like, he was really a crutch for her in season 7 with that storyline. But then in season 8, it was her, and it was her journey. Yeah. And I think that's important because, I mean, it's not like she's with him because he helped her write her book. He didn't help her write her book. He helped her get the ball rolling with publishing it. So a little bit more in detail, some things that we saw in the script that we actually saw on camera. When we know that Lucas and Nathan both gave Elizabeth flowers, but we only saw her reaction to Lucas giving her flowers. Which, if you're writing a TV show and you have 2 men interested in a woman, if you're leaning towards one, you're going to show that man giving her flowers rather than the other man. Or even if they showed both of them, that would be okay. Maybe it's a level playing field, but they showed only Lucas giving her flowers. So that was just a little detail.
Yeah, because you saw her reaction to that. You never saw her reaction to getting them from Nathan. And that would be an important moment for any couple.
Yeah. And that's the moment that things become real, right? That's when there's a shift. That's when Rosemary says, now they're real, because now he's stating his intentions basically. And think about it, as the fan base, as we're rooting for a couple, right? Like, we want one of these couples are going to be endgame and they're going to have a love story. Isn't that a big deal? Isn't that a scene that as a fan you would want to have? Like, you'd want to go back and look at it. You'd want to see that love story develop, right? So why only give it to one fan base and not the other one?
Right.
It's pretty obvious.
And some people from the other side are like, oh, well, we didn't even get to see Nathan give her flowers. And I'm like, well, maybe that should have been an indication. I mean,
yes.
we didn't see it.
Yeah, and it would have taken what, another minute to do that. It wouldn't have been any trouble. They already had him there at her door. So
right. And I don't think, I mean, I don't know this for sure, but I've seen a behind the scenes video of that scene, like where Lucas is walking away and Nathan is walking towards her door. Have you guys seen that behind the scenes video?
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I don't think that they even filmed a scene. It's not like they filmed a scene and then they took it out.
Yeah.
You know, unless I'm wrong, but I don't think they even filmed the scene where Elizabeth gets the flowers from Nathan. So,
I also think the point of that scene was to show that Lucas was ahead, because that's what we see from then on is Lucas is ahead of Nathan when it comes to Elizabeth.
Yeah.
And even if they had filmed it and taken it out, why would you do that if that was the one she was going to end up with?
Yep.
You know. It was all decisions. It was a decision from the producers, the writers, everybody that's involved. They collectively decided, they wouldn't do it like that if it was the opposite. They just wouldn't.
Yep.
I mean, you gotta think from like a producer standpoint. You're not gonna do that if you're not gonna mislead the audience. So there were several foreshadowing moments. And one of them was in season 7 after Clara and Jesse's rehearsal dinner when the men were all helping their women put their coats on. And Lucas not only helped Elizabeth put her coat on, but brought it over to her without her asking for it, which is honestly one of my favorite scenes. I just think it's like the fact that he brought her coat over to her, like my husband doesn't bring me my coat when we're leaving somewhere. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he just brought her coat over to her and just was asking how it went, and then put her coat on her after we saw Lee put Rosemary's coat on her, and then Jesse put Clara's coat on her, and then Lucas put Elizabeth's coat on her, which I didn't pick up on, but Div, you picked up on this foreshadowing moment.
Yeah, I talked about it in length in I think our previous podcast. Was there a previous one?
Yeah.
We did 2 Lucas ones. Go watch both of them, guys, you know.
Yeah.
Get a refresher.
The full coverage.
Yeah, but it totally felt like foreshadowing to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it did. After you mentioned that, I was like, wow. Wow. Because it's all the couples.
Yep.
Yep.
Married couple, soon to be married couple, and
eventually
to be married couple. Yep.
Yes. Another huge thing is that Lucas and Elizabeth share a special place. This is still, season 6 and 7. They share a special place, which is the library. I mean, they kind of own it together. They kind of run it together. Elizabeth and Nathan don't have a place like that. And then later on, Elizabeth and Lucas share more than one place together. But I mean, that's pretty significant if you ask me.
I think so.
Yep. Every couple needs a place or 2.
Aw.
So
that's cute. Every couple needs a place. I like it.
A special place. Let's throw in special. I think it's
special
cute.
Place.
Yes.
Every couple needs a special place.
There we go.
You're just a brilliant writer.
Ugh, yeah.
Love it. Okay, well, then we've got Union City, which is like, come on. It's not only foreshadowed. There's a lot of foreshadowing, I think, that happens. It's also like a huge step in the relationship. I mean, they went on an overnight date together. They went on a road trip, which is, if you've ever been on a road trip with somebody, that's like, you have to go on a road trip with somebody and build some furniture with somebody before, yep, this is going to work. Well, they've got the road trip down.
Yep.
I don't know how much furniture they're going to build together, but.
Well, it was even more rare when, considering the time period.
Right. The furniture building is rare, or the road trip?
The road trip.
The road trip.
They didn't have IKEA back then, right?
Well, and Lucas
building in the library.
Yeah, and Lucas,
True.
we will say he's not the handiest with the hammer, right?
Not when you
But-
need.
True, but then he went and built a school.
He did. Oh yes, he gained
Yeah.
experience.
That's
Yes,
right.
yes, yes.
He's
He's
good.
gonna
They
be
can
great.
build some IKEA furniture together.
The other
They'll be
side
fine.
uses that against us or against him, poor guy. They don't know.
He'll be ready to build a
They-
house now.
Yeah, they needed to give him some flaw. Now he doesn't even have that. Sorry.
There you go. He gained experience. He lost his flaw. His one flaw. I know what Gobbles on.
Darn.
It's my favorite line. Okay. Okay, but also we could go, we're gonna go into this whole Union City thing in another episode someday. But so skipping through like the many obvious things. Well, okay, so there's the foreshadowing with first of all, she's wearing white. And they're mistaken for Mr. and Mrs. Bouchard. The biggest part for me is when he offers his arm and he's like, shall we? And she looks at it and she looks up at him. And then she's like she thinks about it for a second and then she takes his arm. Like, that's a choice.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't have to do that. She didn't have to give him her shawl to put on her shoulders either. But
Yeah.
So, a question. Was the Fort Clay storyline pre-planned, or was it thrown in there in season 8 as a last-minute, last-ditch effort to be like, well, we've got to put something in there? What do you think, Div?
I think it was pre-planned. I'm
Me too.
99% sure it was pre-planned. And the reason I say that is because, first of all, it flows. People, come on, be objective. But also because I thought it was weird how last season, before season 7 started, Kevin made this weird comment during their ET interviews where he was talking about what his character is going to go through in season 7. And he says, and who knows, maybe Nathan even knew Jack. There's some Mountie stuff, backstory there. He didn't say backstory, but like he talked about the Mountie background, and then he says, and maybe Nathan even knew Jack. This is like season 7. And then I watched his Sarah Scoop interview today. It's from February 12th. And in that, he says this season 8, he and Erin get to do the storyline that they've been pushing to do since season 6. So this is something that they had been wanting to do. And that makes sense, right? Because they had kind of been anticipating that it would happen. He mentions it in season 7, and then now it comes to fruition in season 8. So I think it was pre-planned.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. I actually have not seen those interviews, so I'm gonna watch those after this. But I just thought from the very moment that they met that there had to be some connection because it's good TV. I mean, come on, like it was just a thing that I was like, I bet you Nathan knew Jack, or like he's got some tie to Jack or something, and like how can you pass that storyline up?
Mm-hmm.
But then if they said it in an interview too, I mean, what other storyline would Erin and Kevin want to do that they've been wanting to do since season 6?
They didn't really have anything
I mean,
else. Yeah. They kind of start the ball rolling in episode 3 because that's when the inquest happens, the Inquisition. And then that leads up to the conversation with Allie about Fort Clay, and then it kind of goes through the end of the season.
Yeah. And it starts from the beginning of that season, so.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah, I always thought that it was something that John Tinker created and that it wasn't really valid until then. But when I hear you guys talk a little bit about it, it does kind of make sense that's, I hadn't heard that about Elizabeth saying that they had or Erin saying that they had something that they had been thinking of since season 6. And that kind of makes more sense then.
So yeah, if you guys want to watch that interview with Kevin that he did with Sarah Scoop, we're going to put the link in the description box so you guys can just go scroll down there and watch it. He talks about it specifically at the 16 minutes and 15-second mark. So
Perfect. I'm going to use that link and I'm going to go watch it.
Me too.
And then from a marketing standpoint, I mean, if you look back at all the promo photos that
Yep.
were posted by Hallmark Channel, it was almost always either the full triangle or Lucas and Elizabeth. It was almost never Elizabeth and Nathan, right?
Mm-hmm.
For
Correct.
every episode, they posted pictures of Lucas and Elizabeth or all three of them.
They were so freaking obvious. I'm going to say this right now. They were so obvious. I'm always going to have a story about getting into it with the other side.
Here comes Div's rant.
No, I'm good. Because this poor girl deleted her account after being wrong. I don't think it was not about me, but like about the end game, which whatever. What was I gonna say? Oh, okay. So this girl and I were talking, and I offered the promotional pictures as an example of, hey, look, as an argument for our end game, because I was like, look, Hallmark's been promoting this since episode 4. And Parade works with them, right? They had that picture of Lucas and Elizabeth outside the saloon. It's from that serendipitous scene. And then from then on, pretty much every episode, there's a picture of Lucas and Elizabeth together. I think except for episode 9 and 11. I think all the other ones, they had them. Why would they do that? She was like, oh, they're doing it to throw people off. They don't want people to know. I'm like, what? That is ridiculous. Why would they? That is huge. That is a marketing tool that they're using, right? They're using this couple as a promotional thing. And I think they had one picture of Nathan and Elizabeth. It was like a socially distanced picture where they're like standing like this. Like it's there's nothing romantic about it whatsoever. So Hallmark couldn't have been more clear. If people had paid attention to social media and actually thought and considered the fact that, oh, maybe there's a reason that we're only seeing Lucas and Elizabeth, maybe something would have clicked. I don't know.
Yeah, 100%. All the promos and the marketing and campaigning and stuff is always pointing to them, and you're not gonna do that. I mean, that's their job, is to build up anticipation, for this couple. Is what they were doing. So, and
that's when Hallmark Twitter stopped asking the question that they were asking every week, like, are you team Nathan? Are you team Lucas?
Well, and they know that like online polls aren't exactly 100% correct, but
70% correct, apparently. If you're on Twitter, most of you know what that's about.
So going into season 8, I'm just gonna say Elizabeth is always apprehensive to agreeing to going on a date with Nathan. Every single time he asks her, she is like, she's hesitant. She sometimes doesn't even answer. Yeah. She's just always apprehensive about it. And I mean, you can't have the leading lady hoping to be in love with a man who she is always like, I mean, there's like the angst part of it, but this is different. This isn't like a normal Hallmark, oh, you drive me crazy kind of thing. This is like I don't feel comfortable going on a date with you.
Yep.
Every time.
Yeah, and going back to what we were talking about with the flowers, we don't get to see the flowers, right? And these are all things that, if you've invested in this love story, there's a reason they put out DVDs and stuff, right? And so you can go back and you can watch how the love story developed. And these are all important things, like the first time she got flowers, when it became real, and then the first time she gets asked out on a date. Like, these are all things that the fans are going to go back and look at. And if, let's say, Team Nathan goes back and looks at it, what they're going to see is Elizabeth not being able to say anything. I'm talking about season 7, episode 10, where he asks her right before the prisoner transport, and, she can't say anything. Like, is that really what you want to see? And then we go to the next season, we go to episode season 8 episode 1, and she's like, all right, like, is that what you want to see?
Right. And then it ends up not happening, and that makes you want to, even if
Right.
it was reluctant, she agreed to it, you would think they'd at least show the actual degree rather than have it turn out to be a non.
Exactly. And if they're being honest with themselves, they would ask themselves, I wonder if it had anything to do with her seeing
Oh, it has.
you know who. Come on. So.
Yeah.
Oh, you know who, meaning Lucas, not Voldemort.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, so some other things that are kind of come into play is budget. If you think about the money that they spent on certain scenes, this is one of them. When they decorated the entire set for Christmas for a 13-second clip showing Lucas leaving, it seems like they could have done that without decorating the set for Christmas, because they didn't do a Christmas movie. They literally just did that for a 13-second clip. So
it was important. It was a catalyst for the whole season.
We know for a fact, because Elizabeth says it in her journal entry, that since the hug, Elizabeth and Nathan have not spent any time together. She says that they haven't really seen much of each other. So we know that nothing has happened between them since
And
the
it's
hug.
been what? I mean, it's been at least 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because she says Lucas left right after New Year's, and now it's springtime.
So maybe 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
I'd say more like.
And they haven't spent any time together.
Yeah.
So there's that. Then there are some big old contrasts, and the contrast between Elizabeth's reactions to seeing Lucas versus her reactions to seeing Nathan are night and day. Just like, for example, in the opening of season 8, when she first sees Nathan, he asked her on a date, and again, she's apprehensive. She's just like, oh, I don't know. And then she opens the door, and Lucas is there, and she's like, oh my goodness. And he asks to talk to her when he has more time, and she's like, yeah, I'd like that, with a big old smile on her face.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, and then from then on, every single reaction or interaction with Elizabeth and Nathan versus Elizabeth and Lucas are completely contrasted. Like,
yeah,
there's just like arguing with Nathan, and there's never any sort of satisfaction. And then she sees Lucas, and she just lights up, and she has this huge smile on her face.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, she made that decision about. Well, I mean, her reaction to Nathan there is not even knowing that Lucas is back in town. It's simply her relationship with Nathan. It has nothing to do with Lucas being there and her, not knowing how to choose. I mean, it's so different. Yeah,
we've talked about this in the past, but like, she doesn't even know that Lucas is even in the picture. She doesn't even know if he's coming back. She doesn't know where he is. She just hasn't seen him, and she probably assumes at this point that he's not coming back because he's been gone for so long. So yeah, that's a huge factor. Without Lucas in the picture, she still doesn't want to say yes to Nathan asking her out to dinner.
Mm-hmm. She says in that opening journal entry that she can't continue to see them both as romantic, was it interests? Mm-hmm. Suitors? I don't know. She uses one of those words. And then I think when Rosemary comes back and she and Rosemary go on that walk, she says, I felt more for Nathan than I thought.
Mm-hmm.
I think dialogue like that is thrown in on purpose, but now we know why she says that. That is about the projection. It's not about like, oh my gosh, I have all these overwhelming feelings for Nathan. Mm-hmm. It's the transference. And but she hasn't understood the transference yet. Yeah. And it's up to us to kind of put these pieces together. They're not going to tell us. They want the triangle to go through the end of the season. So I think she is making decisions without even really realizing it, because then in the next episode she's pretty sure that she doesn't want to be with Nathan. So regardless of what she says, she already knows where she stands with Nathan.
Right. And like you said, when she tells Rosemary that she felt, after she hugged Nathan, she realized that she felt more for him than she realized. But jumping ahead, we know that she's projecting Jack onto Nathan. We know that Erin herself has said it took her a while to figure out the feelings that she was having for Nathan. It took her a while to realize that those weren't romantic feelings. Those were some sort of other feelings. Yeah, she was feeling something towards him, but it wasn't romantic. And she didn't even realize that, I mean, until the end. But even when she hugged him at the end of season 7, that's when she was like, oh my gosh, like she thought that her Mountie was dead and he wasn't. So she hugged him.
Yep. That was the perfect lead in. If there were like all these feelings and if she felt more for him than she thought, what's stopping her? Do you know what I mean? She could go out to dinner with him. That shouldn't be a deterrent at all. And so this is almost independent of the Lucas factor. It's just not there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a competition between Nathan and Lucas. I mean, it's really not. If you think about it, it's does she have feelings for this man? Does she have feelings? She doesn't. She has a different sort of feelings for each man, and it's not a competition. Even though Nathan thinks
Nathan thought so. Well, he lost if he thought he was in one. Hello, ceiling fan.
Oh no, I'm losing it. Hang on. Hang on 1 second. Oh no, this is going bad. So then we've got Nathan's ties bringing trouble to Hope Valley for a second time. I just wanted to bring this up because so many people argue that Lucas brought trouble to Hope Valley in season 6, and it was one time. Oh my gosh, it was one time. But also we found out that his whole tie thing was him trying to protect a widow, and then it was done. But Nathan's ties, his brother-in-law coming into town, bring trouble again after his dad already brought trouble once, and then it just kind of negates the argument that Lucas brought danger to Hope Valley.
No, and Team Nathan likes to throw out the fact that, oh, he got Elizabeth held at gunpoint. I'm like, she showed up at the saloon of her own accord. Lucas didn't send a carrier pigeon to her house, to the row house, to be like, hey, Elizabeth, come meet me at the friggin' saloon. Like, she showed up there, and they used this against him. And I'm like, be angry at Elizabeth for going over to check on this man, you know, that you guys don't like. That's competition. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then Nathan lies about it to Elizabeth because she's like, or am I talking about Nathan's dad? Maybe, I don't know. One of the times that Nathan's ties bring trouble, he lies about it to Elizabeth because she's like, who is that man? And he's like, oh, nobody. It's just somebody I've had ties with in the past. What is that noise? Is that me?
Oh, it's a plane.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Okay. I was like, I thought it was like some weird feedback or something.
Oh,
okay.
I'm sorry. It's
okay.
It's totally your fault. Stop traffic.
Dev.
It's leaving. How much of it did it interrupt? Did it interrupt?
No, it didn't. It really interrupted.
It was very subtle.
Okay, good.
And I just wanted to make sure it wasn't feedback. Okay. Okay, so then the writers had Nathan borrow money from Lucas. The writers did that. They put that into the story. I mean, Nathan could have borrowed money from Lee or Bill or maybe anybody. And they had Nathan borrow money from Lucas, and they had Lucas not question him at all. And I feel like this was kind of maybe to lean the audience one way.
Okay, that's not the only time that the writers try to make the audience sympathetic to Lucas, right? They have him lend Nathan $1,000 without questions, no questions asked. He even says, "Hey, do you want more?" And then kind of moving ahead, I know we're not there yet, but in episode 5, when he tells Elizabeth he's not going to the graduation, it's because of Nathan and Allie, because he doesn't want to take away from their day. And then when he talks to Allie when she comes into the saloon, he wants to smooth it over. And so Allie is also his concern. Like, they show all this. They even show us that he's generous with other people. Like, for example, with Mike too, right? After the explosion happens in episode 3, he goes up to Mike and he says, "Are you sure you don't need some time off? Like, I mean, it's totally fine if you want to leave. I mean, if you want to take some time away from work." Like, they show us good deeds. Even in season 6 and 7, we've seen it. But what do you do when the audience just wants to hate the guy?
Right. I mean, I think that that's their whole reason for doing it, is they're trying to get because they knew they created this big divide with these two teams. And so they're trying to get the team that doesn't get the end game to get on board by seeing the good in Lucas. And they just keep demonstrating that throughout. But like you say, if they don't want to see it, they're not going to see it. So
they did not want to see it at all. And then they're saying they were misled. It was right there. I'm sorry. It was right there in front of your eyes, and you just turned a blind eye to it.
Yeah. And like you said, they're not only showing Lucas's generous side to other people, but to Nathan specifically. And it's for Allie. And Lucas and Allie have this sort of connection where, you know, Lucas is going to help Allie out. And I mean, Nathan is her dad, so he's going to help him out. He's a good guy. So we've already proved that. So Lucas and Elizabeth's mutual knowledge of literature is highlighted so many times throughout the show. It's kind of a theme. And while it's not necessarily a prerequisite for a relationship to have a common knowledge of literature, it is a big part of their story, and they make sure that they leave in these scenes over and over again where they're both on the same page when it comes to literature. Like, for example, when they quote Mother Goose. I mean, it's just Mother Goose, but it's just like, hello, they didn't have to put it in there. You know?
Even when they're mad at each other, when they're doing the whole, you know, it's food for the soul and stuff like that.
Yeah.
More.
And they finished each other. They finished the rhyme together, right? Or who finished it?
Elizabeth
finished
did, I think.
Yeah,
Lucas finished it. And one for you, one for me, and one for...
Yeah, Elizabeth said, and one for Sister Annie.
Yes. So it went back and forth a little bit.
Yeah, it did.
It just kind of shows, like, oh my gosh, they're clicking.
And then the way they just look at each other. I mean, we've already covered this too, but it's like you can't fake that either.
Yeah.
It's just there. And then here's another contrast. The way that Elizabeth looks at Lucas versus the way that she looks at Nathan. Again, kind of already covered this, but the way that she reacts to them is different, but also the way that she looks at them is different. The way that she looks at Nathan is kind of like, I don't want to be too mean, but I mean, if you like, she cannot help but smile when she looks at Lucas. And when she looks at Nathan, she's just like concerned.
Red over her face, yeah.
Yeah, she's just doesn't. She doesn't feel elated when she looks at Nathan. Is all I guess all I can say. So that's another just a huge contrast between the two men. And then I mean, there's the whole Lucas says, whatever you decide, I want you to be happy. That is so classic, not just Hallmark, but like TVs, movies in general. It should be a classic thing in real life too. I'm just saying, if somebody loves you, they should want you to be happy. If this is news to you, then maybe you should be like, oh, okay. Somebody who loves you should want you to be happy. Okay.
Yep.
And it's classic.
Okay, so to kind of tie into the I want you to be happy, that actually is something that Jack says. And kind of stepping away even from just the show aspect of it, Brian Bird, during his interview with James Lott Jr., he did it before season 8. And he says that the guy Elizabeth chooses, the one that they want to put her with, is someone who puts her happiness ahead of his own. And it's pretty much the guy's mentality is going to be, what can I do for you? Not what can I get out of this relationship, but what can you get? And I want to make that happen. So it's about putting her happiness first. And as you will remember, Kevin has said in an interview, I think more than one interview, that Nathan needs Elizabeth. So with Nathan, it's about what can Elizabeth do for him. But what Brian Bird is saying and what the show is trying to tell us is that they want Elizabeth to be with the guy that's going to contribute to her life, not the other way around. And if you look at Jack's letter, the goodbye letter, he says, know that I want nothing more for you than your happiness. And you are the perfect woman. Actually, I think he says, you are the perfect woman. Know that I want nothing more than your happiness. You go to Union City. I have always had faith that I would know the perfect woman for me when I met her. Keyword there, perfect
woman.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you get to episode 1 of season 8. I want you to be happy. That is pretty much exactly what Jack said in his letter. You are the perfect woman. I want nothing more than your happiness. I've always had faith that I would know the perfect woman for me when I met her. Whatever you decide, I want you to be happy. They are tying Jack and Lucas together. And that's actually what Brian Bird's interview also said, was that this man is going to want for her what Jack wanted for her. So it's a continuation.
Well, and then continuing from that too, when they're tying, like you said, tying Lucas to Jack, like the whole thing where Lucas is helping Elizabeth become published is also tying Lucas to Jack, especially when she first gives him her stories and he says, I love the illustrations. And she's like, oh, my late husband drew them. And he doesn't question that or anything. He's just like, oh, that's, that's lovely. Like, he loves the illustrations, so which is such a tie to Jack. And then like you were saying too, Kevin mentioned that one of the, I think, did he say like one of the guys kind of depends on Elizabeth and the other guy challenges Elizabeth, which is obviously Nathan depends on Elizabeth. Lucas challenges Elizabeth because they say that in the script when she first starts writing her novel, and she says, some people challenge me when I need it and some people need my help, and they show Lucas first and then Nathan. So it's just reiterated over and over again. And
and that's what we see, right? We see Nathan is all about Nathan. It's I want Elizabeth, I know you want me. And it's just about what he can get from her. It's never, okay, Elizabeth, I want you to be happy, I want you to decide. And that's why Lucas lets her go even, right? It's because she needs to decide her own path. It's not about him deciding for her or telling her how to feel.
Or even going, like, we're really kind of going off, but like this is really, no, this is like the whole fact that Nathan, the fight for love thing. Like Nathan keeps saying, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And it's worth fighting for. But what is he doing to fight for it? He's not really doing anything to fight for it. And Lucas is fighting for it. Elizabeth is fighting for it. And Lucas steps out of the picture because that's what has to happen in order to fight for or defend her love. Defend their love, like he says.
Yeah.
Of course, again, we're getting way ahead, but I mean, it's important.
Yep.
I mean, okay, so then there's like the huge whammy. If we're going back to where we were, Elizabeth agrees-ish to go to dinner with Nathan and Allie and Jack. And they get there and they run into Lucas and she's like, I'm sorry, I'm not feeling well. And she turns around. She cancels their date as they're on their way. This had to have been a moment where people were like, oh no. Or like for me, I was like, oh yeah, like this is huge.
But you could even see it on Allie and Nathan's face. They even knew the jig was up.
Her eyes are on Lucas the whole time. I don't think she looks at Nathan till after after Helen and Lucas have walked away, when he goes, Elizabeth, when her eyes are following Lucas. This is me being mean or brutally honest, whatever you want to look at it as. There's a Team Nathan fan who was so excited about that scene. I'm talking about after it aired and was like, oh my gosh, it's Grant as a family. And actually took a screenshot of Elizabeth, Little Jack, Allie, and Nathan walking. So like right before, the scene with Lucas happens, of the four of them walking. And I'm like, do you not see what Elizabeth is looking at?
Yeah.
Are you seriously ignoring the fact that from the moment she appears into the camera, her eyes are on Lucas, like the entire time? Like Nathan is over there talking to Allie. It's completely disconnected. It's like if they were a married couple, mommy has eyes for another man, It's like, and they choose to ignore that. And I am just like, dude.
And that's their problem. They just ignore the signs that are all right there. They're not hiding anything.
You were not being misled, okay? You were choosing to ignore.
Mommy has eyes. Oh my gosh. So funny. It's so true though.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we don't have to worry about that happening.
Yeah.
I mean, who else? Like, if you're going to, if you're into a guy and you're going out to dinner and you like maybe don't feel so well, you're still gonna be like, nope, let's do it. Let's go to dinner. I mean, you got to eat anyway. But she's like literally walking to dinner and then she's like, I'm sorry, I don't feel well. Can you walk me home? Nobody does that if they're into a guy.
Well, considering what they end up with Lucas and her for their first date, they end up just changing the location.
Yeah, she doesn't.
Like they were not going to let anything stop them.
No. They change locations.
Oh, goodness gracious.
They make it happen.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on, another super important narrative to the story is Helen and Elizabeth developing a relationship on multiple levels. First of all, she's Lucas's mom. Second of all, she's editing Elizabeth's book. And then there's the whole, skipping ahead a little bit, but she kind of has this little bond with little Jack too, eventually, who hugs her. We'll get there. We'll get there to the details. But I mean, there's just this multiple layer relationships that's building here. So significant to the story. And then we see Lucas telling his mom that he is staying in Hope Valley for Elizabeth. So here's the thing. We know based on interviews that Kevin and Chris are both staying in Hope Valley. I don't know if everybody saw that, but they said in an interview that, I don't know who it was. Somebody called them up and said, hey, don't worry. No matter how this story goes, you guys are both staying On one calls the heart. So if you think about if Elizabeth had chosen Nathan, what other reason would there be for Lucas to stay in Hope Valley? He's already said in the script that we have seen on the show that he is there for Elizabeth. So if she had chosen Nathan, why would he stay in Hope Valley? But we know they're both staying.
Yep. The other thing is for Nathan too, let's not forget that his reason for coming to Hope Valley is Elizabeth. I don't think we mentioned that just now. I mean, it's obvious, we know that. But I think we said Lucas is staying for Elizabeth, right? We know that. Yeah. But then so is Nathan.
So Nathan is in Hope Valley because of Elizabeth.
Yeah.
And little Jack. He's there, as we find out, to protect them. Mm-hmm. But he's staying there maybe a little bit for that, but also a lot of it is for Allie, because Allie has put down roots there. And then Nathan says when he tells Elizabeth about the Fort Clay secret that he wanted to leave. He wanted nothing more to leave, but Allie has made friends there. So yeah, he's in Hope Valley because of Elizabeth. He wouldn't be there if he hadn't wanted to come protect her. But now Nathan has more reason to stay in Hope Valley than Lucas does, because Lucas has said Elizabeth is why I'm staying here.
Okay, beautifully
right put. Yeah, and if Nathan, when he's not the end game, she wouldn't need that protection that he came to offer her, that he was going to watch out for. She has somebody to do that now, so that wouldn't be tying her, but Allie certainly would be tying him.
Then we come into Nathan telling Elizabeth that he loves her. My thing is that when she says, I have to tell you something that I've known for a while. She has made this decision a long time ago, but she just hasn't told him yet. Mm-hmm. That she can't be with him. She can't give him more than he wants.
Well, I mean, looking at it from a writer's, director's perspective, there's no way that they would show the first time saying I love you to the woman in like blurting it out fashion. There's no way that that's going to be how you come across this first I love you with somebody who's endgame. In my opinion, that's just that would be poor writing in my opinion. A lost opportunity. So I saw it as soon as, I just knew that at that point there was no debating for me anymore, but I was already past that point anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly. How do you as a fan go back and look at these moments? I mean, I don't know. And what was the other one that I was talking about besides the flower scene? Asking her out. Like, what can you, as I'm sorry, Team Nathan fans, but what can you go back and look at and see a love story? Like, I don't get it. Like, we didn't see the flowers. She has never been excitedly, she's never excitedly said, yes, I want to go out with you. She hasn't made that attempt at all. And then the first I love you is a big friggin' deal, right?
Yeah.
And it was a complete and utter misfire. And it happens again in episode, was it 9, when it happens in the prison. So I'm just like, everything just keeps misfiring, and it's because they are not the love story. They are not the end game. And they've been showing us, writers have been showing us that from season to season to season. And it's up to you whether you want to be in denial or, see what's in front of you.
Yeah. I remember my initial reaction. So when I first saw this scene, this was before I was on Twitter talking to people that are like-minded, and I was just watching it like, oh, good, this is over. Like the whole Elizabeth Nathan thing is over. and I know somebody personally that was a Team Nathan fan. And I remember, I think I got on Twitter and saw people talking about like how excited they were about this scene. From the other side of it, they're like, oh, good. You know, I'm so glad that this happened. And I'm like, huh? So I texted this person that I know that's Team Nathan. And I was like, do you feel like she just chose Nathan? Like, do you feel like that wasn't an end to this? And she was like, no, definitely not. Like, she definitely is still like on board with Nathan. And I was like, okay. My initial reaction was like, okay, this is done. We're done.
Yep.
And then when we go to the next part, I'm gonna jump ahead. Can I jump ahead?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She tells Rosemary, I know, this is what she says. I know I made the right choice not to be with Nathan. She made the choice not to be with Nathan. She said that in the script that we see on screen.
Yep. Independent of Lucas. She's like, I don't know what that means, you know.
Yep.
Exactly. She says, I don't know if that means I made the decision to be with Lucas yet, which we see later on that she does. But she made a choice not to be with Nathan.
Yep.
And it wasn't just because he's a Mountie, because she was like, I've known this for a while. I feel like you want more than friendship. And he's like, I haven't been trying to hide it. And she's like, well, I can't give it to you. So that was my initial reaction. And then it's like, okay, so then we're backed up by her line to Rosemary. I know I made the right choice not to be with Nathan.
Mm-hmm. She never regrets it, ever.
Mm-mm.
Never.
Not once. And she doesn't apologize for her relationship with Lucas. She never has second thoughts about it. She never has any anxiety about it. Like, not once. We never see it. So it was there the whole time for people to assess.
Mm-hmm. We were not misled. Let's just
reiterate
we
that.
weren't.
Yep.
Yeah. And then right after that, Elizabeth tells Helen, because Helen is like, oh, Lucas tells me that Constable Grant is a suitor. And Elizabeth goes, like, all defensively, Constable Grant is not a suitor.
Mm-hmm.
She says it again. He's not a suitor.
And why would they need to why would she need to respond to that? It's because she knows that it's, his mother. She kind of is wanting to make sure that is clear with her.
Yeah. Probably with anybody who would assume that she thinks that Nathan is a suitor. She's like, no, I already chose that I already said that he's not a suitor. I already decided that.
And she's like, is that what Lucas told you? Like, she's a little stunned that Lucas had felt that way. And I think that's why I'm happy that she cleared that up with him in the serendipitous scene.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Because she's like, oh, is that what Lucas told you? Like, okay, so now she realizes that Lucas sees that as a possibility too. But she's like, no, it's not. That's not how it is. Okay, so then Helen goes to Elizabeth's house and they have this like little discussion where they're basically friends, which is a good relationship to have with your mother-in-law. I'm just saying. And then little Jack hugs Helen. And if we're talking about the times in real life, if we're going to COVID restrictions and saying, they're not really allowing kids on set unless they really need to. They're not allowing people inside unless they really need to. And they're not doing scenes that are unnecessary. There are all three of those elements in this scene, and also hugs. They're reducing physical touch because of COVID. Yeah. And they have little Jack go hug Helen. It's got to be important. It's got to be a huge thing, and they didn't delete it they didn't put it in deleted scenes. It's there. It's in the script. We saw it happen. So it's checking the boxes, and it's foreshadowing, in my opinion.
Grandma Helen.
Yeah. I mean, she feels this connection with this little boy that she maybe even didn't feel with Lucas when he was little, because she says, and then he goes up and hugs her.
Yep.
It's the cutest thing also.
Yeah, they could have easily just cut that out. They didn't need to have, but they chose to, and that's again a choice by the writer. Elizabeth's making all these choices. The writers are making choices as well. So and
they didn't even just it didn't just happen, and then they could have cut it out or not. They made it happen. It's a 2-year-old, and they said hey, go hug this woman. He didn't just go hug her.
He wasn't ad-libbing, you don't think?
No, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure they told him to. So it's obviously important. Did they have Nathan's mom come and have? No, they didn't.
Archie could have, and they didn't.
He didn't hug Archie.
No.
Jack did not hug Archie.
Poor Archie.
Archie. I do love Archie.
Yeah. Archie got a raw deal.
Oh, Linda, there's so much meaning to what you just said.
So then there's tension between Lucas and Elizabeth because Lucas found out about this secret that Elizabeth was keeping from him about his parents, because Helen asked her not to tell Lucas. So she was kind of put in between a rock and a hard place. And then Lucas found out, and he's upset about it. And then they work through it really quickly, but they do work through it. And people say that Lucas and Elizabeth had nothing happen where they had to work through it, whereas Elizabeth and Nathan had a lot to work through. Well, here's the thing that's big that they had to work through, but they worked through it. That's the thing. Lucas or Nathan and Elizabeth didn't ever really work through things. They just encountered things, and it never really resolved. But this is a big thing that they got through together. They forgave each other. And then, it's strife that has to happen. It's a TV show. It's got to happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. They work through it like two adults should, and sometimes that's missing from the other relationships.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Look at that sun shining down on Dan.
I know.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Like a star child.
I'm yes. The chosen one.
Okay, so here's another contrast situation. Lucas doesn't shy away from talking with Elizabeth or so when Elizabeth and Lucas are at odds, he doesn't shy away from talking to her. When in contrast, Nathan avoids talking to her at all costs.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Elizabeth and Lucas are kind of at odds because of the whole secret thing with his mom and dad. And then she finds him in the library, and he still talks to her and helps her with her books and helps her open the door and helps her get her books in the saddlebag thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And
Saddlebag.
I'm gonna be honest, if it were me and I was kind of angry with somebody, I probably wouldn't open the door for them. Probably wouldn't open their saddlebag for them. I would have been I avoid conflict. So, but I just think it's so awesome that he is just still oh, hey, I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to help you, even though I'm kind of mad at you.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's our gentleman.
Away.
Yeah.
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 I mean, he's just consistent. It doesn't matter that they're at odds. He still knows that it's only right for him to be a gentleman, and he is.
Yeah.
Yep. And then, okay, so then Elizabeth finds out that Nathan was stationed at Fort Clay, but she doesn't find out from him. She finds out from Allie. Which again, if we're going from the standpoint of the writers, the producers, etc., they had Allie let her know about Nathan being stationed at Fort Clay. He didn't tell her. He still has not told her that he was stationed at Fort Clay. Not only that Jack replaced him when he was on suspension, but he has not told her that he was stationed at Fort Clay. So the writers continue to depict Nathan as secretive.
Yeah, that's a great point. I never really thought about how that would be something that if he was the chosen one, you would think that he would have been the one to man up and tell her the truth. Yeah. Good point.
Do you know how many times I've seen Team Nathan fans say, "Oh, Lucas is shady. I don't trust Lucas." Like, I've seen so many comments where they're like, "No, he's hiding something." And I'm just like, "Oh, you hypocrites." Whatever.
I know. Well, I know. It's frustrating. It is, because Nathan,
And it's from one moment at the very beginning of his character.
Right?
A lot of characters have come on that way. Jesse came that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and we found out early on that like Lucas seemed mysterious at first, but we've already done this on a podcast episode. Like, we've already proven this. He's not a shady guy. He came on mysterious, yes, but we found out the reasons behind his secrets very early on. And Nathan is still, to this day, in season 8, keeping secrets from Elizabeth.
Yep.
Not just everybody else, but from Elizabeth.
But it's Nathan, so it's okay. Whatever. But it's true, right? Like, that whole thing with Lucas and Amos was resolved in season 6. And he has done nothing but be completely honest since then. There's no reason, absolutely no reason, to be saying, "Oh, he's shady. Oh, he's hiding something. I still don't trust him." Like, what basis do you have? You have nothing. You just want to feel that way. You just want him to be, to have like some kind of black mark. In the meantime, we're all the way into season 8, and this is the secret that Nathan has been keeping since he freaking set foot into Hope Valley. But that's okay, because it's Nathan. And then
Almost
there's the
3 years
brother-in-law thing. Yeah, and then there's the brother-in-law thing, which is pretty much the same thing as the Amos thing, right? Trouble followed Lucas in the form of Amos, and then the brother-in-law came into town for Nathan, and it was a dangerous situation both times. And Elizabeth ended up in the Amos thing because she went looking for Lucas. That had nothing to do with Lucas. But somehow you put Nathan and Lucas next to each other, and Lucas is the jerk. Lucas is at fault. He's shady. He's this, he's that.
Yeah.
And Nathan somehow is like one step below sainthood.
Yeah. Well, and even when that whole Amos thing happened, at the end of it, it was like, is there anything you're not telling me? Nope, that's everything. Nathan and Bill, if they thought there was anything more, trust me, they would have been investigating him and looking into his background and digging.
Yeah.
There's just nothing there.
Yeah.
People.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many opportunities, like in the next scene when Nathan rides in.
Yeah.
And she literally asks him, "Did you ever meet Jack?" And he just says, "Nope," and rides away. Like, no, he didn't meet Jack, but he had, like, later on, he says that there was never a good time to tell you. There were so many good times to tell her. She literally asked you. Like, you could have been like, get off your horse, get off your high horse, literally, and be like, yeah. I didn't know Jack, but my gosh, he replaced me, and I should have told you 3 freaking years ago.
And there was even a Twitter exchange between Erin and Kevin on that whole thing. It's like, why won't you tell me? And he's like, well, you asked the wrong question. It's like, she's asking the right questions, just not the way you want it to be.
She doesn't know. Like, she can't be like, did
Yeah.
Jacko replace you on a training mission? She doesn't
Right.
know that. She can't
Right.
ask that. She says, did you ever meet Jack? He can't just say no and right away.
That's
He
right.
just should be like, no, but.
That's right.
Oh my gosh. And then, like, even if he was avoiding conflict, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But then later when he's like, no, I know I wanted to tell you, but there was never a right time. No, I'm sorry. There were so many right times.
Yeah. And even if he didn't have the time and was going somewhere, it's like, no, but let's talk about this later. Or, I can explain later or something to that. But yeah.
He wasn't even
No
riding
longer.
away because somebody broke
No.
out of their prison cell. He was just riding away
Right.
because he didn't want to talk about it. Okay, so then Lucas asks Elizabeth to dinner to celebrate the end of the school year. And Elizabeth is the first one to call it a date. Because Lucas is like, oh, you're delighted? Delighted how? And she's like, to join you on a date. And he's like, will this be an actual date? An actual date. She's the one to initiate the fact that it's an actual date. Okay. And then when Nathan rides by, you would like, so they showed us on the previews that was like Nathan rides by and Lucas and Elizabeth look at him like, oh no, this is some sort of like getting in the way of things. But in the actual storyline, the actual script that we see, they look at him and then they look at each other and they're like,
Oh, well.
like they don't care. They're like, oh. So,
They probably notice how much she rides by them. Anyway.
yeah.
It's so funny because have you looked on Twitter? I need to stop looking at GIFs. Actually, I don't look that much, but if you go and look, one of the Team Nathan fans cut out the part where Lucas is there and they just have Nathan riding by and Elizabeth looking up and looking at him. And like they've put it on there like a romantic moment. And I'm like, if you need to go to those lengths to alter scenes to make the GIFs look, cute and romantic, no, you shouldn't have to do that. You shouldn't have to go and like if you look at season 7 too, they've cut off where Elizabeth and Lucas are actually waving to each other and they make it look like Elizabeth and Nathan are waving to each other. And I'm like, yeah, come on. If you have to alter stuff like that, you are not freaking being misled. You're misleading yourself.
Yes.
You never should have to do that.
You're taking it out of context.
Exactly.
You're taking it out of context and you're just fabricating, just like Allie does, a romance that doesn't exist.
Doesn't freaking exist. Like the warming of the search scene, they just thought it was so romantic. And I'm just like, no. Good Lord, people. Do you not know what projection is? It's, they just don't want to see it. Like
Right.
Someone before the season started, I hope it was before the season started, had a GIF of, the part where Nathan holds Elizabeth or like keeps her from like getting on the horse like for a second. I don't think he's touching her, but like there's that like intense look that he gives her after saying, he'll leave the Mounties or whatever. It's before he says I love you. And someone put in like a little caption that says insert kiss here.
Yeah, like I'm sorry, but there was no kiss there.
That's why you have to insert it.
It's fan fiction at that point. Like it's fan fiction. You're writing your own story there that doesn't actually exist.
Mm-hmm.
And people can go along with it if they want to, but that's not what's actually happening.
Don't get me started on Team Nathan fan fiction. Oh my gosh, it's so bad. I'm not going to rant today, you guys, but I am going to be brutally honest here.
People love the rant.
My gosh.
Love the books.
I know, but we gotta mix it up a little bit,
Mixing it up. Okay. No rant today.
Well, we still have 5 episodes to go.
Yeah. Speaking of which, after that, Elizabeth thanks Joseph for making the effort to come. Okay, this is very, I want to say profound, but I've said that so many times. So what's a synonym for profound? I don't know. It is important. that's less intriguing. This whole scene to me is huge because Elizabeth thanks Joseph for making the effort to come to their parent-teacher conference, and he says it was too important to miss. And then meanwhile, Nathan does not show up for his parent-teacher conference, and also on top of it, Elizabeth doesn't realize that Nathan didn't show up until she looks at her list of parents and she sees, oh, Nathan Grant. He's the last one on the list. And she's not like, where's Nathan? I wonder where Nathan is. No, she looks at the list and Nathan hasn't come yet. And she's like, oh, Nathan hasn't come yet. But they put in the script, thank you. I know that it's hard to get away. Thank you for coming. And he says it's too important to miss. And then Nathan misses it.
To go fishing. Isn't that-
Oh Lord.
I mean, how yeah. I could
At a
say
certain
some things.
point, yeah, there are no words. Like, I mean, it's so
No.
obvious.
Yeah.
Unless
Yep.
you don't want to see it. And then to top it off, like, I don't know to what degree they want to show him as, being insensitive, but when he does show up for the parent-teacher conference, and Elizabeth is trying to hint at wanting to talk about Fort Clay. Like, she makes it seem like Allie is the one having trouble, right? Like, she says, it's still weighing on Allie, but we know that at this point, Elizabeth wants to get him to start talking about Fort Clay. And he goes, have you seen his expression? He goes, well, that's all behind me now. Like, it's just very like haughty and very like, I've put it behind me. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
You've put it behind
It's
you.
not even,
Wow.
It's not even about him.
Exactly.
It's about her. And he's put it behind him? Like, it's not even, like, that is so insulting.
Right?
Like, oh, this thing that is, like, largely including you, this is behind me. And I've never told you about it. But it's
So-
fine, 'cause it's
When did
behind
he say
me.
that? When did he say
It's when he shows up at her house that night and they have like an impromptu.
that? Okay.
Oh, it's the scene that Team Nathan claims is more romantic than the
Romantic. The
backyard.
dark lighting. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I've only watched it the one time, so
And
I
I'm
can
like,
think I don't know much
Nathan, that is so unimpeccable, dude. I don't think that's a word, but it
It
should
is.
be.
We're gonna make
Webster's.
it one.
I'm gonna call Webster's dictionary.
It sounds like a real word.
It
I
should
don't know. Sounds like a thing.
Yeah. Impeccable.
Either way.
Ugh.
I didn't think that we could really, I didn't think that we were gonna get too mean about Nathan in this one, but like there's no way to not. Like it's just, come on. Yeah.
No, and it's not
anyway.
like we're not going out of our way to be mean. Like, we're
No,
just being brutally
just-
freaking honest, people.
We're literally talking about what we saw in the show.
Heck yeah.
We're not fabricating anything. We're not talking about things that we think maybe happened outside of what we saw. We're
Yep.
talking about what we saw on the screen.
Exactly.
Anyway, we might want to cut that out, but
Why? No. We're keeping this in, man. We're keeping this in because that's our little declaration. We have always backed up everything we've said with facts.
Yeah.
We don't just
Yeah.
throw out like random, like, oh, our fan base makes up 70% of the Hardys. For those of you who aren't on social media, Team Nathan seems to think they make up 70% of the show, which is very, very interesting. I don't know. And guess what, you guys? I got my DVDs today, and these were the highest company order that Edify has ever had. So I don't know. I mean, if 70% was an issue here, that wouldn't be possible.
And just so all the listeners know and viewers, unimpeccable is not a word. We realize that. So we'll come up with something.
Did you look it up, Linda?
I did.
Oh, what's the word for not impeccable? Just
Dude,
not
we already said it's not a word.
No, it sounds like a word to me. I think we should add it.
Deficient, inadequate, unpolished, fallible.
It's not the same. It
No.
doesn't deliver the same message.
Yeah, I like unimpeccable. We'll make it.
Unimpeccable. It's got to be a word. It is a word now.
In our fandom,
Add it
it's
to
a
the
word.
dictionary.
I'll send a message to Webster.
So Lucas goes over the dinner menu with Gustav for his first date with Elizabeth, which could just be like, oh, he's going through but like, if you compare and contrast this to Nathan's first date with Elizabeth, which didn't actually happen, he's taking her to dinner at the cafe, which is fine and dandy and whatever, but Lucas is literally creating a menu for their first date, and he makes sure to reiterate the fact that this is very important to him. Like, hey, Gustav, like, this is super important to me, so don't like mess this up. And just that in itself, in comparison to the let's go to the cafe for dinner, it's just so different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then to Elizabeth as well. You know, she's getting a new dress, and she's getting fitted for it, and making this big, thing about a dress for her first date. Whereas when she went on her first date that ended up not being a date with Nathan, she might have changed clothes. I guess, I don't know.
She didn't even change her clothes.
Oh.
She didn't. But she didn't change clothes for the library thing either. The library dinner at the end of the season, right? Because they weren't at that place at that time.
Because and it wasn't a date.
Wasn't a date. That's right.
Until she took off her jacket. Yes.
Until she said, yes, it's a date.
Until she loosened the buttons.
So she was literally like,
Da-da.
I need to throw in some music over there. But yeah, she didn't really put any effort into it. It was more like I'm talking about the cafe invite.
Yeah.
She was just like, let's get it over with.
Literally.
Yeah, but yeah, here she actually put so much effort in, and you could see how excited she was, right? Like the camera, like right before the scene ends and the screen goes black, they show her like smiling. She's like gleeful with Rosemary when she's getting fitted into that dress.
Yeah. Oh, she's literally giggling. Like,
yeah.
Cuter than that, but I mean.
You said it.
That's a cute giggle. No. She has the cutest giggle.
She does.
I can't do it. Clearly. Okay, so then after Lucas and Elizabeth have their first date planned, okay, before they even go on their date, he comes to her house with her horse all saddled up, which if you have ever been horseback riding and you've ever saddled up your own horse, it's a big job to like put a saddle blanket on. Like you have to like brush the horse and put the saddle blanket on, put the saddle on. And he did all that and then brought her horse to her house like super early in the morning before everything starts. Right. Yeah. And then this is before their first date. So already he's like, okay, she wants to date me, so I want to hang out with her. I'm gonna go hang out with her. And I know that she likes to go riding, so I'm gonna do this. And now they ride to the bridge, and they have two special locations. Now they have the library and they have the bridge, which still to this day, Nathan and Elizabeth do not have any sort of shared space.
Jail?
I was gonna say jail. But no, that brings back Jack memories.
Yeah. It's projection.
Very true.
And I think I already brought this up when we talked about the scene last time, but come on, look at the contrast, okay? We see Elizabeth riding her horse at the end of episode 2, and she's like writing away after a love declaration, right? She's writing away from Nathan in tears. Then we see her in this episode writing alongside the man that she loves, which she doesn't say it yet, but right, and she's gleeful, and here's some more of that giggling
again. Yep.
Right, and it's so, it's profound to me anyway. It's like, think about it. She's upset and crying, and she rides away from Nathan, and she's laughing and she's happy, and like she's writing alongside this other man. And I just resaid the same thing, but my point is, just really think about that, the difference, like what she's feeling for each man and where, how her comfort level, basically.
And it's the contrast between Lucas and Nathan. If we're talking about the horse scenes, it's a contrast between Lucas and Nathan, and a parallel between Lucas and Jack.
Yes.
Because when's the last time we saw her laughing on a horse is with Jack.
Yes.
I mean, the only other time we've seen her riding a horse laughing is with Jack. So, I mean, the giggles and like again, they didn't have to put that in there. They could have deleted that. They didn't have to do this whole, like, I'm sure that's hard to film a scene where they're riding full force on a horse, but they did it. Because it's important. Yeah. Okay, so then we see the graduation ceremony. There's the whole horse scene, which we've already discussed in previous episodes. So we're gonna move on. And at the graduation ceremony, Nathan tells Elizabeth, "Thank you for everything," and she tells Nathan, "Thank you for understanding." Which we've also covered this too, but let's just reiterate. She said it's closure. She says, "Thank you for understanding." She doesn't say anything else. She doesn't say like, "Thank you for loving me." I don't, like, she doesn't say any of that. Like, she just is like, "Thank you for understanding."
Yeah.
That's closure right there.
Yep.
And he walks away.
Yep.
I'm totally agreeing. Because in the next episode, he gets kind of a second wind in that scene with Carson. But at least for Elizabeth, it's done. It's over. Officially in a sense where she's actually verbalizing it. But I think for a while, for her mentally, even, it's there's nothing there.
Yeah, it's like if you put yourself in her shoes, which I say all the time, but really, if you really do that, which I think you have to do.
Yeah.
If you're standing in her shoes thinking, okay, so this man is looking at me saying, "Thank you for everything," and I am dating another man, I say, "Thank you for everything," or "Thank you for understanding. Thank you for understanding that I have moved on. Thank you for, like, what are you going to be like? Don't talk to me, bye." Like, they're still going to be in each other's lives. So it's not like she's just going to cut him off and just be like, "You're out of my life forever." Like, "Thank you for understanding that I have moved on." And that should have been enough. Then Jack needs his mama. So Elizabeth moves their date to her backyard rather than canceling. And let's just say how what's another word for profound? It's just so important.
Significant,
important, profound. It's just, she doesn't cancel their date because her son needs her. She moves their date to her backyard because her son needs her. And he's like, "Okay, yeah, let's move it to your backyard." And they still have their date.
Yep.
And it's another huge contrast to how we see her feeling around Nathan, because when she's with Lucas, she feels at peace. She takes a deep breath. She says, "This is a huge weight off my shoulders. This is like the first time in forever that I haven't felt something weighing on me."
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite lines ever. I love that line so much. And then in contrast to what we see her around Nathan. She's feeling heavy and she's feeling like there's something weighing on her and there's something she wants to talk about and she just needs to talk about Allie, but it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It's such a contrast. That concludes our episode for today. And thank you so much for listening and watching. We really, really appreciate all of you who continue to listen and continue to watch and continue to participate in our social medias. We love interacting with you guys, and we're just so glad. We're so glad to be here. Everybody is like, thank you for doing this. And we're like, of course, it's our pleasure. We love doing this. So keep interacting with us. We love answering comments and continuing conversations with other people's opinions. And if you're not following us already on social media, we are at the LucaBeth Lounge on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube, and we are at LucaBeth Lounge on Twitter. So make sure you follow us on all the things, and thank you so much for listening and watching. We will see you next time in the lounge. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.